So now we're going to take a look at section 7.2, which is looking at various budgeting approaches. So first of all, the budgeting cycle. So budgeting is a management process that has four key elements. The first being that we need to set and revise goals. We've mentioned that previously. And then we're going to gather and revise information. We're going to create and revise our financial budgets, and then we will review our performance and revise our budgets. Typically, multiple versions of a budget are prepared until the budget is completely finalized. As each cycle progresses, the budget improves as decisions are made, but each cycle is costly. Effective budgeting processes produce benefits that exceed that cost. So, yes, there's a cost to do budgets, but the benefit of doing it far outweighs what the cost is. Okay, so there are several different methods of doing budgets. There is the incremental budget, there is the zero-based budgeting, and then top-down versus bottom-up approach. And that's what we're going to take a look at now. So first of all, incremental budgeting is where we are creating a new budget that is going to be based upon gradual changes from a prior period's budget. And this is primarily how budgets are formed. Most businesses, this is what they'll use. And so incremental budgeting, it can be applied to any expense, revenue, asset, or liability. And so, for example, budgeting an amount for salaries, we take the budgeted amount would be based upon an annual increase of the salary that was paid in the previous year. So in our example, salaries in the previous year were $200,000. Management expects a 5% increase each year in their salary. So we would take that and then add 5% to it. So then our new total would be, we would budget $210,000 for the current year that we're doing the budget. Now, advantages and disadvantages of incremental budgeting. An advantage of it is that it is fairly easy in order to administer, but it also changes from the prior year are easy to identify and also can be applied consistently across multiple departments within an organization. But some disadvantages of it are that problems if the previous budget was not prepared properly or was prepared under different conditions, because we're just basing what we're doing now on what we did previously. Also, it doesn't provide any incentive for managers in order to increase costs because we're just tacking on to it each year. Changes in business are not reflected easily, and also this can lead to wasteful spending. So that's why a lot of places now they use what is called a zero-based budgeting approach. What this means is that managers have to justify their budget requests in detail from scratch, regardless of the amount that was spent in previous years. So each year is going to be based, they're going to have to justify what it is that they want to spend. And an advantage of this is that it ensures that past mistakes do not get repeated again, because we're just starting anew. It also forces managers to perform a comprehensive analysis of all operations. A disadvantage of this is that it can be difficult and time-consuming to prepare, and also it benefits some departments more than others. It is a disadvantage for a department if the results are difficult to measure, or if that department's results are difficult to measure. So another method that's used is companies will do both. They'll do incremental. Some items might be incremental. Some things will be zero based. And so companies can do a blend of both methods. And so they could use past performance as a guide, which is the incremental budgeting, while also using the zero-based budgeting for those specific areas within their budget. However, it is well worth the effort to use zero-based budgeting. It does tend to be more accurate than incremental. So we can do that. And then finally, for talking about different budgeting approaches, is our top-down versus bottom-up budgeting. So Uh, the success we know of a budget is going to be largely dependent upon the lower management and employee attempts in order to meet their targets, also known as employee buy-in. So when we're doing our budgets, we really look at that and we really want employees to have buy-in in what it is that we're doing. And so two different types of budget creation. We have a top-down budget, also known as imposed budgeting. That is one where it's a budgeting process where all of the figures are determined by upper management and imposed throughout the organization. So upper management is the one that is setting this. Now, a bottom-up budgeting then, also known as what is called participatory or participative budgeting, is where managers and employees at all levels, they cooperate and they contribute to this budget creation. And most organizations, they might use a mix of both of these. Have some items that are given from the top down, and then have most of it be brought up through participative budgeting. Now, one thing that when we're creating budgets, we do have to be really aware of is this concept of what is called budgetary slack. So budgetary slack is going to be the tendency of employees to intentionally underestimate revenues and to overestimate expenses in the budgeting process. And what this does is it can lead to some issues with how the budget is achieved, and then also when we go back and we have to evaluate, how do we do? Because we know that budgets often form a large part of the performance evaluation for employees and for managers. And so building in participatory slack would make it easier for employees in order to meet their projections and their expectations. So participatory slack allows employees extra money to deal with any unforeseen circumstances during the year. And so having budgetary slack means that the organization will potentially not be operating at maximum efficiency. So this is an area that we do need to be aware of. All right. So which of the following is an advantage of zero-based budgeting? Is it that it's relatively easy to administer? The changes from a prior year are easy to identify. It's difficult and time-consuming to prepare, or D, that it forces managers to perform a comprehensive analysis of all operations. And it is an advantage of zero-based budgeting is D, that it does force managers in order to perform a comprehensive analysis of all of their operations. And then which of the following is true? Incremental budgeting can lead to wasteful spending. Top-down budgeting is also known as participative budgeting. Incremental budgeting is applied to expenses only. Having budgetary slack means the organization is likely operating at maximum efficiency. Which one of these is true? And it is A, that incremental budgeting can lead to wasteful spending. And that's why we don't necessarily want to do that for every single item.